We've got an exciting topic for you today, and the topic is Energizers and how to use them, what they are, and all of that. And so, for those of you who listening in, an Energizer is something that facilitators either bake into their design or choose to use in the moment. Something that's going to elevate the energy, as the term suggests, of the group, or change the direction of a group, maybe just to give them sort of a palate cleanser in between topics. So energizers are intended to be good and well used, but they're not always that way, and that's why it's important that we cover that topic. I once ran a group that I got them on their feet with a competitive energizer. This is where it's like the one who comes up with the answers the fastest wins, and a competitive one. And this was right after lunch. So we all know as facilitators what that means. That's
The after
one of the
lunch
biggest
slump.
challenges. Yeah, it is. And so, right after, especially if they had a heavy conversation before lunch about layoffs, and then all of a sudden I jumped in with an energizer that, was just rah, rah, high energy, asking everybody to stand up and shout answers at each other. And that was just not right in the moment. I mean, there was a thick, heavy air in the room at the company because they were going through some difficult times from an operational standpoint. So the Energizer just landed really bad, and it wasn't received well. And so you've got to be really strategic in terms of making a choice to use them. I'd like to welcome everybody to Let's Skill Up Training Table. I'm Charles Fellingham, and I'm joined by Karie Alberon. We're the co-founders of Let's Skill Up, and today we're talking about one of the most misused tools in facilitation, the Energizer.
The energizers, oftentimes we have them mapped out in our facilitator guides, right? We know I'm going to do this energizer at this point in time, I'm going to do this energizer at this point in time. And oftentimes as facilitators, when we're in the moment and in the flow, we tend to, not necessarily read the room, but just stick to the playbook. And really that can be one of the reasons why energizers can have a bad rap. I have been in many trainings where I've used the term energizer and I just hear groans, or activity is the term, and again a groan, or icebreaker, and again a groan. It depends on who we're working with, but they can have a bad rap, and it is oftentimes because we as trainers, we fall into some common traps around energizers. The thinking, though, is a key thing to remember about energizers. They're not bad, right? It's just, how do we frame them? How do we time them? And are we addressing the root causes that need to be addressed at that point in time? Or should we make a different decision for a different energizer or a different approach to make sure that we're leading the group in the direction, both mentally and physically, to where they need to go to be most productive for the training that we're in? That ultimately is the point of an energizer, right? Like Charles mentioned, it can be a palate cleanser. It can be a way to shift the energy and shift the mood. But ultimately, the purpose is to drive the objectives of the training. So when we think about energizers, it's not just that thinking the room doesn't need more energy. It needs the right kind of energy for the state it's actually in and where it needs to be in. So let's talk about some common traps. I have committed these and I've learned from them. One in particular, like we already mentioned, is running the energizer because that's what the facilitator guide says to do at that point in time. We need to leverage our human judgments at that point in time to say what truly is needed, and therefore what activity, what energizer should we do in that point in time. Another common trap that I've seen, Charles, I'm curious to see if you've seen this one, running the same energizer in every session, regardless of who we're working with, regardless of the group. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, you've got to match what people are giving you in the room, and use your guts. If you think the Energizer is going to fall, it probably will.
Exactly. Another common trap, choosing loud competitive activities for a room that's emotionally flat or drained. Oftentimes, again, the reaction that we can get from this is a groan, another, oh, why can't we just dive into the work, right? Or not connecting the Energizer to what comes next and the purpose of or the objectives of the training. It feels like a random detour. People say, why did we do the thing that we just did? Did we just waste time here? My goal is to build my skill set and get my what I'm looking for out of this training. So what we need to do is reframe and think that an Energizer isn't a mood boost. It's a diagnosis followed by a prescription. Most trainers skip straight to the prescription, but if we want to be successful, elevated trainers that drive impact in our trainings, we have to take that diagnosis step.
Yeah, it's so true. Energizers can be your biggest friend when you deliver one at the right moment, when everybody's in the right mood. But you got to think through it carefully. I remember once I was teaching a course called "Be Assertive and in Charge as a Leader," and it was a real rah-rah session. I mean, it was one where you get everybody up and clapping, and it's really one to get the mood up, the emotions up, and all of that. I walked in the room, and everybody was just slumped in the room, and it was a manufacturing organization, so I was in a training room upstairs from the plant floor. And I started off as it was designed to do, by doing a warm-up Energizer to get everybody in the right mood, and it just wasn't happening. So I finally pulled one of the stakeholders aside and I said, "What's going on?" And they said one of the employees got seriously hurt on third shift. So it was just a few hours ago, on a lathe machine that they were working on, seriously hurt.
No,
And
no.
everybody was very concerned about that person. And all of a sudden I realized we've got to change maybe the scope of Energizer and talk about safety and looking out after each other and being aware of your surroundings. And so you've got to read the room and be self-aware as a facilitator when you try Energizers out.
That's so true. That's a great way to kind of allow us to use that as an example to consider what framework could we use, because oftentimes we are in the moment, right? We don't have the time to plan ahead of time, and we have to say, what do we do? What can be a mental back pocket tool that I can leverage to understand what I need to do in this moment? So why don't we walk through a quick framework, very simple 3-step framework, as we like to lean on in our podcasts. And when we're thinking about, I need to do an Energizer right now, we can follow these 3 simple steps: read, reset, and return. So read, basically we're asking the question, what kind of low is in the room actually right now? What is it? Their energy is low? Is it their mood is low? The vibe? Did something big and challenging just happen? What is that quote unquote low that the room is experiencing? For this, we can scan the room, right? Try to understand
Yeah.
physical fatigue, mental fatigue. Charles, you mentioned some of these in your example earlier. What else could we look for?
Well, in the level of engagement,
Hmm.
you can look at people's posture and body language.
Hmm.
And sometimes the room is set up perfectly for a great Energizer, and you've read it right. But this is the art form of facilitation. You've got to read the room and match them where they are.
Exactly. We might see people on their laptops, on their phones, starting to talk to a neighbor, right? Starting to get distracted, or maybe everyone all at once. You hear a little Slack notification on people's computers, and everyone starts just honing in on their computers,
Right.
right? Something is going on that is shifting the energy and shifting the status of the room. From there, we then move to reset, right? Now we've read, we understand what's going on in the room. We understand basically the diagnosis. Now we need to say, what's the prescription? So what activity actually addresses that diagnosis? What could this look like, Charles? What have you done and seen?
Well, you can tell when somebody's fatigued, whether it's physical or mental. you one of your prime responsibilities as a facilitator is to know as much as you can the people in the room and be able to notice differences in their behavior.
Hmm.
And so if there's disengagement or and you need to reconnect, um, then you want to be able to bring the right energizer into play to match their mood.
Right. Or if it's physical fatigue, obviously we can't send everyone off to take a nap, but we could help to facilitate some movement, right? Oftentimes, going for a walk when we're not in a training can help to lift our energy. So, how could we bring that into the training room, both virtual and in person, right? How can we lift the energy, build some movement into what we're doing? Could be another potential strategy.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
then
Tra-
oh, go ahead.
Transitions are really important.
Mhm.
We may have covered this in another podcast that we did. You got to bridge from the energizer to what's coming next. Make sure people are aware as you return to the content of what's coming next. So if the energizer sort of was a palate cleanser, they need that just to get
Mhm.
their brain wrapped around what's coming.
Exactly. And that is the return, right? Return
Yeah.
back into the flow of the session, the flow of the training with purpose and with a solid explanation of why did we just do the thing that we did. I will, again, freely say that I have committed that trap or fallen into that trap of, okay, we did the Energizer. Now let's dive back into the work. And I've gotten the question of, so why did we just shout? Why did we just clap? Why did we just walk around the room, right? We
Right.
have to build that connection, that solid bridge between the Energizer and where we're going next. So a
Yeah.
simple one liner is fine, but we want to stay away from, okay, and on to the next thing, back to it, right? Build
Right.
that thread so that people stay in the moment, stay engaged, and we don't risk having them disconnect.
One of the things that I run into when I work with facilitators is they say, well, I don't have enough knowledge of energizers and enough in my hip pocket where I can just pull one out in the moment. How do I develop a keen awareness of what sort of energizers are available? And I just wanted to remind you all, hey, go to our website. We've got
Hmm.
101 energizers and activities. It's a guide for you just so you can build your repertoire of energizers.
So true, so true. Lots of great things that we can pull from so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
All right.
And just to double down on what could be some examples of these energizers, why don't we break it out, Charles, into physical fatigue, mental fatigue, and disengagement?
Sure.
For each of those different categories, what could be some things that we're reading, some resets to make, and then returns back into the session? So why don't we start with physical fatigue first?
Yeah.
What
If
could be
it's
an example of what we do here?
Oh, well, anything to get sort of the energy up. And usually, if to get energy up, you get them up. And a lot of training sessions, people are sitting for long stretches, and and it's always good. I prefer high energy activities and things like that anyway, just to get people standing up in front of a flip chart or a whiteboard or whatever and get them talking to each other. But just if you see that physical fatigue, get them on their feet to stretch and get the heart rate beating a little faster. And
Exactly.
that's certainly one way in which we can, address the physical. Uh,
Exactly.
uh,
I love too how you mentioned get them up in front of a flip chart, in front of a whiteboard, right? Have them move around the room with purpose. One example of how we could build not just let's do human bingo, but let's do something that is more tied to the training objective while it's helping to lift the energy. We could do a human spectrum. This is a common approach, right? So we physically line up the participants along the room based on where they stand on a statement tied to today's content or today's objectives, right? So now we're reinforcing the content, we're reinforcing the objectives, and we're getting them moving, we're getting the energy up. That is how we can connect those two challenges of energy plus driving objectives.
yes.
What about
Yeah.
mental fatigue? Oh, go ahead.
Ooh, mental fatigue. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've just a quick example. Um, I was working with a team of sales trainers in an organization, And I challenged the team of sales trainers, what is a good kind of energizer for salespeople? And one raised his hand and said, I use this all the time. I get them into pods and I have them create, it's competitive. I have them create a list of how many different definitions or meanings of the word no.
Hmm.
What does no mean? It doesn't always mean no. It means a lot of things. And this person said, I've had people come up with like 30 answers to that question. And it's competitive. The one with the team with the most wins. So it just really worked as it was an in the moment energizer that worked
Hmm.
well. And I could tell they were mentally fatigued, that they really needed that refresh.
That's great. It's lateral thinking, right? Getting them to think about something that seems somewhat disconnected still from the training, but actually is helping them to see, oh, I might get this kind of no from my stakeholder, from my client or the person that I'm trying to sell to, right? That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly, again, the kind of energizers that we need to be running. Something that isn't just let's rah rah, let's go for it, let's get the energy up. But what's the objective? We're trying to address mental fatigue while building the skill set. And
Yes.
then that last one that we mentioned, that disengagement, right? When we see the side chatter, the distraction, the emotional flatness after a hard topic, what could we do here?
Yeah, well, it's really important, I think, for this one to, just do like a quick energizer, a share out,
Mhm.
just a lighter connection question, not competitive, not necessarily volume. It might be something like, get them into pairs, do a
Hmm.
one word check-in, like how's everybody doing in one word? Or, just some sort of a quick appreciation round, say one thing you really like about the person you just worked with.
Hmm.
It could be just a low-key personal question. What's something you're looking forward to this month? Just to sort of take that disengagement and move it toward alignment so that everybody's back in the room with you and with each other.
Yeah. You made me think of one example of doing this in a previous company that I worked for where we were running performance management. Performance reviews were coming up soon, but the organization had just gone through a very big reorg. A lot of people had left the company, and so the entire just vibe of these managers, I could tell people were down. They were thinking, I don't know how I'm going to go into this performance review when I've inherited a lot of people that I don't know, that I haven't worked with. And so we actually started this session which was to basically explain the process and make sure that we were calibrated on or pre-calibrated on the definitions. We started with a just a slide, it was virtual, a slide on the screen where we showed lots of different, I think it was office characters from the show The Office.
Mhm.
And asked people to, they had all different facial expressions. So in the chat, everyone had to respond with which facial expression basically represents how you're feeling towards the performance review that's coming up. And we
Yeah.
had a lot of facial expressions that were, kind of slumped down, some that were shocked, that some that just didn't know what to expect, and that allowed us to start in a very, real setting, saying, yes, this has been a challenging year. Yes, we have lots of questions going into this performance review cycle. Yes, I know that we don't know what to expect, and that is what this session is to help us to see, to help us to know what is to expect, what is your role as a manager in this process, and make sure that you feel comfortable and clear on what is going to happen throughout this process. So, something like that, again, not necessarily to lift the energy to move into a rah rah energizer, but to get people aligned and to make sure that they are willing to be part of the session and participate in the session.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, don't just solve for the room's energy. Solve solve for the room's energy on the way to the point you're actually trying to make. That's really,
Exactly. But
yeah.
so true. So true. So if we boil it down to maybe three questions that we can keep in our mental back pockets, um, as we're thinking about need to run an energizer.
Yeah.
First question I would say is, again, what are we actually seeing right now? Physical, mental, or emotional low? Then, does this energizer match that, or is it my default? Should I choose a different energizer? And based on what I choose, how will I bridge back into the content in one sentence?
Yeah, and this also helps you grow because if we always go to our go-to energizer, we're missing an opportunity to try something new that may be even more prescriptive.
So true. So true, right? Could be something even great, even better than what we originally had in mind.
Yeah.
So, okay, Charles, let's boil this down into three takeaways for our trainers that are listening in. What would you say are three takeaways that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about
Okay.
doing energizers?
Yeah, so energizers aren't all about energy. It's not the one thing we're going for. Examine whether the room is physically tired, mentally foggy, or disengaged before you choose how to respond with an energizer that's going to hit the mark.
Hmm. Would agree.
How
I'll
about
add
you?
another one.
Yeah,
So use the sequence, right? Read, which is diagnose, or set. So match the activity and return. Bridge back into one sentence. And then I think I would say the last one, at least for me, is if you're already reading, losing the room, name it, just like you did earlier with your example in the manufacturing company. Pick the smallest matching reset and bridge back explicitly. I
yeah,
notice that this is going on here. Let's reset so that we can make the most of our time. And then from there, we can move on into the rest of the content, the rest of the session.
yeah, so good. Yep, yep. So be agile and use your guts and use the reservoir of energizers that you have in your hip pocket to come up with the right solution in the right moment.
Exactly. Thanks everyone for joining us for our Let's Skill Up Trainer table. Um, as always, if you enjoyed this, feel free to share it with a fellow trainer friends, L&D manager, anyone and everyone who could potentially benefit from thinking differently about how we run our energizers, and visit us on letsskillup.com, where you'll see not only those 101 facilitation activities and energizers, but tons of other resources that can help to upskill and uplevel our training to make sure that we are having an impact in that training room.
Yeah.
That's it for today. We'll see you all next time.
Bye now.